Okay, welcome everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. I have us at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and we have a short window today of only just 30 minutes. Hello, thank you for joining us. My name is Thomas Meredith, and I'll help moderate today's webcast. On behalf of the Resource Management Institute, I'd like to welcome you to today's Power Up on working in mixed project methodology environments. Before we get started, let me cover just a few quick housekeeping items. We have made a PDF copy of today's deck available in the handouts window of your GoToWebinar panel. You can download there if you would like. And we are recording the webcast. So later today, we will have an email go out with a link to the recording. Feel free to pass that along to any colleagues who might be interested in today's webcast, but were not able to join us. And finally, we do have a quick Q&A session at the end of today's webcast. We're not going to stop the webcast for any questions, so if something comes up during the presentation, you can use your questions window. If you go to webinar panel, go ahead and enter them in there. We'll pull all those together and have a session at the end of today's broadcast. Okay, again, we got you for 30 minutes, so let me get out of the way and introduce the RMI Director, Ryan Childers. Ryan, welcome. I'll hand it off to you.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Thomas. If I could, I'll do a real quick sound check. Can you hear me okay?
Audio sounds good.
All right, perfect. Well, welcome everyone to today's Power Up session. As Thomas mentioned, my name is Ryan Childers. I'm a director with the RMI, and I appreciate you taking time out of your day to be with us here today. We have a lot of really great content for you on working in a mixed project methodology environment. So for those of you that are managing resources where some projects are delivered using an Agile methodology, some others are delivered using waterfall, some others are maybe a hybrid or some other approach, this ought to hit really, really close to home for you. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about some of the challenges introduced by working in a mixed project methodology environment. And I'm going to give you some recommendations on how to really combat some of those challenges. Then I'm going to introduce our featured speaker for today's session, Kieran Markham from Teradata. And he's going to tell you about managing resources in his mixed methodology environment at Teradata. Before we go any further, I do want to take just a second to thank the sponsors of today's session. Today's session is brought to you by Keyed-In, Maven Link, and SciForma. We really appreciate your support of not only the RMI, but of this session as well. And I also like to take a second to do a quick introduction of the RMI and tell you a little bit about us. So for those of you who may not be familiar with us, we are an institute that is 100% dedicated to the advancement of resource and workforce management thought leadership. And we do that in a number of ways. If you're a project-based business, we help you improve things like project performance, resource utilization, and customer and employee satisfaction. And we do that through best practice definition and market research. And you're going to start to see some of that market research as part of today's session as well. And then also training and education through our RMCP certification program and other industry events. If you haven't had a chance to check out our website, I definitely encourage you to take some time to do that. You see the address right at the top of the screen here, www.resourcemanagementinstitute.com. The nice thing about the RMI is that it is 100% free to join. And if you look in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, you see the join button. It's circled in green for you there. If you click on that and provide us just a little bit of information, you are in, and that gives you a lot more access to content on the website and opportunities to collaborate with the RM community. There's a great forum you can take advantage of, and there's also an opportunity to gain insight from events like this one, our research reports. We have a lot of white papers and other thought leadership pieces out there as well. There are a lot of best practices and benchmark data that you can take advantage of once you visit the website and also join the RMI as well. And the last thing I want to mention here is information about our upcoming program schedule. So things like our Introduction to Resource Management course, our RMCP certification, and our brand new Advanced RM course, and of course our annual symposium. The website is the absolute best place to get information about those events and see our program schedule, and also register for those events as well. Okay, with all that, let's move into the topic of today's Power Up. And again, it's working in mixed project methodology environments. So, we know Agile delivery methods are here to stay. Everything we see in here clearly supports that. We also know there are a lot of organizations using waterfall delivery methods and even some hybrid methods. The reality is there's a time and a place for each one. And as resource managers, we're going to have to be able to prepare for and staff and forecast and source in an environment where some projects are delivered in one delivery methodology while some others are using other methods. So in this mixed methodology environment, it's absolutely real. And when I say that, I like to have some data to stand behind it. And so what you see on the screen here is data that's actually pretty hot off the presses. And it comes from you all. It comes from our RMI members. It's coming from our recently released Q2 survey on Agile and resource management. One of the questions, for those of you that took the survey, one of the questions that you remember is we asked respondents to identify the delivery methods that are present in their organization. And so it's pretty interesting to see some of the different combinations that are in play here. And so we've got this mixed methodology environment that we're going to have to navigate through. And so let's talk for a second about some of the similarities and differences between Agile and Waterfall, and then get into how each one impacts resource management. And I promised you I'd give you a couple of recommendations around how to kind of navigate that environment. Before I do that, I do want to preface this by saying this is in no way intended to be a debate on whether one method is any better or any worse than the other. That's probably a debate for another day, and probably a debate for a significantly longer power-up session. And so, at the end of the day, whether we're working in Agile or Waterfall, the approach is still trying to get to the same endpoint. We're still trying to generate business value, but the path that those projects take is just a little bit different. And so in a Waterfall methodology, we know we're going to take projects and structure them into a series of stages. And the idea is we're going to complete one stage before we move on to the next. Requirements are documented up front. We spend a lot of time documenting those requirements. Our scope is determined and fixed, and our resource needs are generally estimated. We also have a much longer, more time-intensive planning cycle. In Agile, our projects are a little bit different. They're structured into a series of smaller iterations or sprints. The time frame of those sprints is determined up front, and our resource needs are generally more fixed. Scope is that thing that's more negotiable. We've got a much more iterative approach there, and we've got a shorter, more dynamic planning cycle that we're dealing with. And so, how does each one of these affect resource management? So let's talk about that for just a second. So in Agile, we have a much shorter, more dynamic planning cycle, as I mentioned. We're dealing with a shorter time frame or a shorter planning horizon. Generally, we think of our assignments as being much smaller. And so when we have those smaller assignments, we're dealing with more churn. That leads to more part-time roles and more time slicing of resources. And those resources, we're going to ask them to play, multiple roles. We've got more cross-functional roles, ask them to wear multiple hats. In a waterfall environment, we've got a much more rigorous planning cycle up front. We've got a longer planning horizon, so we're looking out a little bit further. We've got a more predictable environment. We've got some longer assignments, and so that generally means we have less churn. Our roles are more full-time by nature, and we have more specialized roles. And so what does all that mean to resource management and resource managers? Well, it means if we have some projects that are Agile and some projects that are Waterfall and some hybrid projects as well in our portfolio, it means we're going to have in that portfolio some longer-term assignments, some shorter-term assignments. We're going to get some really good visibility into some of our demand, and we're going to get some not as good visibility into other parts of demand. And so, we're really going to need to understand from a skill standpoint which resources are more successful in an Agile project, which resources are more successful in a Waterfall project, or both. And so let's, start to make some sense of that and think about some recommendations to help us kind of navigate there. Sorry, I think we were picking up some background noise. So, again, how we're going to try to make sense of this, I'm going to give you 3 things to help you kind of think about, and then I'm going to bring Kieran on to talk about how he's doing it at Teradata. And so, where my mind starts to go is all the way back to some of the fundamentals of just-in-time resourcing. Jitter, it's been around for a long time. It's tried and true. And one of the really cool things about when Jitter was designed, when it was developed, is it contemplated supporting a portfolio of work that was mixed. having some projects that were delivered in an Agile methodology, some that were waterfall, and then even some service work. And so 3 fundamentals, 3 recommendations that I'd offer you here to help us kind of navigate that mixed project methodology environment. And it starts by knowing our supply. And so when we know our supply, when we get our arms around all those resources that we have at our disposal, we really want to have a normalized set of roles and role names. And that ought to be consistent across the organization. Having a well-defined, and I'll say taking it another step further, having a well-managed skills inventory as well, and then establishing a global view into our assignments. I like to think of this as our resource management chessboard. I want to know where all of my pieces are out on the board, where all those resources are, what are they assigned to, what's their end date, when are they coming off of those assignments, how allocated are they, so that global view into our assignments, and then also knowing our demand. At the end of the day, regardless of whether we're delivering in an Agile methodology or a waterfall methodology or some other approach, the work is still the project. And so we have to be able to define and profile that demand. So define our resource needs in terms of the roles that we need, their start date, their end date, the desired allocation percentage, and any specialized skills as well. And then get a global view into all of our drivers of demand. It's really, really important that we have that as well. Then the third thing I would offer is we need to govern our assignments and allocation. So govern that assignment, hold and reduce this notion of switching or any risk of switching. And then think about, how many ways can we slice a resource? We know if we spread resources too thin to be effective, that can generally be a problem. And so with that, I want to step aside here and introduce our featured speaker of today's session, Kieran Markham from Teradata. Kieran, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone is well. Ryan, can you hear me okay?
Yep, you sound great.
Perfect. Do you mind going to the next slide, please, Ryan? Cool. As Ryan mentioned, I work for Teradata. I'm the EMEA Resourcing Director. I've been with Teradata now for sort of 6 years continued service. I've played many roles within Teradata. I played a project manager, I played a product owner, and I've sort of been doing resourcing for Teradata now for just over 4.5, 5 years now. So I've worked across EMEA and I've worked across sort of done a bit of APAC and Japan and China as well. But over the last 2 years, I've been concentrating on sort of being the EMEA lead. Ryan, can you go to the next slide, please? Not to go too much into what Ryan has sort of gone over today, the differences of Agile versus Waterfall, but obviously, you do have, fixed things with Waterfall being fixed scope, estimated resources, and Agile sort of being more sort of with your fixed resources in time and more of an estimated scope and sort of see what challenges and demand changes will happen over time. Ryan, if you go to the next slide, please. Most development teams I've worked with over the last sort of 6 years or so will always normally identify themselves as, thinking they're Agile, but more than likely they're more than using a hybrid model that, includes elements of Agile, which does include Scrum as well as Waterfall, maybe Kanban or something different like XP as well. Go to the next slide, Ryan. So part of Agile, includes adjusting and adapting rather than using a perspective set of guidelines. So claiming Agile is the best approach is actually anti-Agile itself. At Teradata, or Think Big was sort of the Teradata's sort of big data arm for a number of years. Most of our customers would think they're working in Agile, and I sort of really disagreed with this, especially when I was a project manager as well. We're probably delivering more in between methods. One was incremental waterfall, which requires a stable project requirements and clear deliverables. Work is normally broken into a set of fixed time resources and sort of fixed costs, which again is predominantly waterfall and increments. This sort of method reduces commonly associated with pure waterfall and improves quality as testing is done during each increment rather than done all at once. The other sort of method we used here at Teradata was iterative methods. accept that requirements may change and allow their evolution by adding opportunities for feedback after each increment or iteration. This sort of helped and resolve issues early on. Again, the advantages of sort of being a bit more agile and, getting the full, doing a sort of 360 stuff. Again, testing's performed throughout rather than all at once, and there's a lot less risks with this, and hopefully this improves quality of work as well. Go to the next slide, Ryan. Sort of our role as a sort of resource manager. I mean, how do we staff these different projects without really sometimes understanding or knowing what methodology a project manager is sort of going to use on this project? Because obviously, from early on from a resource request, how we do at Teradata, it doesn't often say, oh, this is going to be an agile project, this is going to be a waterfall project. It's something we sort of discovered during the sort of journey of that resource request. Ultimately, a resource manager is going to sort of still continue being an air traffic controller, looking at our current, our upcoming, and our demand coming out of nowhere. We're not going to really understand what that methodology is until the scope of work has actually been scoped out itself. So if you go to the next page, Ryan. So what I've found key to sort of help us be successful here as Teradata with me and my resource management team is one of the key things, which is, comes from JITR as well, is making sure you're having your staff meetings. This is, where you're checking with your PMs or your consulting directors, engagement managers, whoever's leading that project, just to make sure if they've, anything's changed on that project, making sure that the person has started the project is obviously always useful as well, and if they're still continuing the need to be full-time or part-time on that project. Again, with either Agile or waterfall, depending on what you want to do. With an Agile project, I'd recommend checking with a project manager every 2 weeks at the end or beginning of that sprint, depending on when they think it's best to do that. And with a waterfall sort of engagement, it's, I would say at least once a month to check, just to make sure that the expectations are being met with that person's utilization. And to make sure as well if there's any changes or customer changes as well. At Teradata, predominantly most of our projects are time and material and sort of last between 3 to 6 months. So we often have regular check-ins with our sort of stakeholders. Again, this might be a PM, just to make sure that, are we hitting the utilization our consultants needed to hit to achieve our revenue targets. What we've also done as well is for projects sort of ending or might need to be extended, again, because we're working on a time and material sometimes, is sort of start planning within 30 days. This sort of gives us a better idea of what the deliverables are going to be when we can start planning other people for projects, and if they need to be, find a new project, and sort of give them options as well and explain risks if we, need to, if they don't have a agreed thing with a customer for an extension, we start looking at new projects for them, and obviously give them other options as well if we need to start swapping people out. Ryan, if you go on to the next one, please. Sort of key points, I would say, is get to know your resources and your company, understand their needs while obviously balancing the utilization goals of your company. I sort of make this key for my staff because obviously we have a key part of a consultant's role within Teradata, and when their experience of what projects they will go on, and really have a big thing with their sort of job satisfaction in a way, and how they sort of experience Teradata. So it's really important to try to get to know as many of your consultants as possible to see what enjoys them. And obviously, if they're on a project or a customer which they enjoy, they're obviously normally putting a lot more effort than going to a project or a customer who doesn't sort of have their interests. Make sure you have your processes documented to give a baseline of what the resource management office can do to help. We found this really useful at Teradata. A few years ago, people seemed to think that Teradata resource management was just a myth. Nothing was ever documented, and with that documentation, we've been able to make sure and streamline our processes to make sure everyone understands and knows what's expected of a resource management team. Understand a project plan is just a plan. Ultimately, real life things happen. Recently, obviously with coronavirus as well, obviously some of the project plans we've had with customers, and unfortunately, have changed. Customers' work have stopped, or sometimes people end up quitting. And obviously, always try having a plan B, C, and D if needed. At Teradata, we're finding more consultants that are working on multiple projects at once. If you're, doing this, and again, this might be more from an agile project standpoint, allow for sort of time in your resource planning for people to work across multiple projects. Don't try overbooking them at 120, 130%. That worker will probably end up being burnt out, and you won't be as productive as you need them to be. Work with project teams as well to make sure you are not front loading them. If a team is constantly overestimating your resourcing needs, this will end up creating inefficiencies which waste time and money and could impact deadline, or worse, or your end goal, and again, not having the right people available at the right time. A lot of the stuff I've sort of been talking about here, I've worked with Ryan and Randy as well, and a lot of it was sort of taught in the RMI sort of in the training they gave, and it sort of really reassured me with this, of what I've been doing over the past 4 years wasn't just me making it up. It was sort of hearing that everything was really useful as well. So Ryan, I'll pass this back to you if that's okay.
Perfect. Well, thanks a lot, Kieran. A lot of really good stuff there. Appreciate you sharing your experience managing that mixed methodology environment at Teradata. Really appreciate that. Before we wrap up today's session, I want to take just a few minutes to share some information with you about the RMCP program and a couple of events that we have coming up, and then we'll see if we still have a few minutes left for questions at the end. I see a few have come in already. So RMCP, it is our Resource Management Certified Professional Program. It's the first of its kind professional skills development and certification program that's designed specifically for those of you that are resource managers. So I want to be really, really clear about that. It's a skills development and certification program for any resource managers. And again, it's the first of its kind that's out there. It is absolutely chock full of best practices in resource management. We've had over 500 companies put some number of participants through the program already. You see there on the right side of the screen some of our corporate adopters that have put several people through the program. So a lot of really good traction with the RMCP program here. Just a little bit about the program. It is available today in 3 different delivery formats. And so you've got several options here if you'd like to go through the program. It's available in a 3-day classroom format. It's also available in a 6-session virtual instructor-led version that's delivered over the web in a format just like the one we're on here. And then we also have our fully on-demand version where you can take the program at your own pace and on your own schedule, literally from the comfort of your own home. Wherever you've got a laptop and a network connection, you are good to go. There's a certification exam at the end of the course, and then we have a recertification process as well. You see pricing for the program outlined here on the screen. The classroom version is $19.95 per person. The online instructor-led version is $18.95, and then our on-demand version is $17.95. And those first two, so the in-person classroom version and the instructor-led online version, generally we offer an early bird discount if you register a little bit early on those. And you'll see those here in just a second on the next slide. And by the way, as an added benefit, if you are a PMP, just for taking the RMCP program, you do get some PDU credit. So a little bit of an added bonus there. Again, and the fees that I mentioned, I should have mentioned this earlier, the fees that you see here on the screen, those don't include travel for any in-person classes, but they do include our examination fee at the end. So just to be clear there. We do have a couple of RMCP programs set to run yet this year. We have a classroom session that's scheduled to occur in Cincinnati, Ohio, out of our headquarters on November the 10th, 11th, and 12th. And again, just to be really clear here, we're going to be following any COVID guidelines in terms of social distancing to make sure that we provide a safe environment for all of our participants and our instructors as well. We also have an online class that starts on November the 17th. And that class, again, meets online with a live instructor from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern time. That'll meet on November the 17th and 19th. And then we take the week of Thanksgiving, the Thanksgiving holiday here in the U.S. We take that week off. And then the class will pick back up on December the 1st, 3rd, 8th, and 10th. So 6 sessions delivered on Tuesdays and Thursdays there in mid to late November, and then the first part of December. So we'll get you done in time for the Christmas holidays. And then, of course, we have the on-demand version, again, that's available 24/7 for you as well. If you're interested in RMCP, the absolute best thing that you can do is check it out on the RMI website. You can find the program schedule, so you'll get information about the courses you see here. And then we'll be posting information about our 2021 schedule in the coming weeks as well. So you'll have something to look for out there. We also have a really cool RMI event that's coming up this month as well. You may have seen our recent announcement about RMI Connect. This is something brand new that we're doing this year. It is a virtual forum, and it's focused on the strategic value of resource management. It's going to be delivered in 2 90-minute sessions. They're scheduled for September the 23rd and 24th. We've got a great lineup of speakers that are going to be taking part in both of those sessions, so something to really look forward to there. Registration is open, and if you follow the link at the bottom of the screen here, it'll take you right there and give you a chance to get registered. Best part about this event is it is free, so even more of a reason to go to the RMI website and make sure you join and take advantage of this opportunity. Also want to mention our annual Resource Management Global Symposium. This was an event that was originally scheduled for later this month as well, but it's been rescheduled to September the 23rd and 24th of 2021. It's going to take place in Dallas, Texas. This is our big annual event as an institute. I'll just say it's a great couple of days of resource management best practices and networking. The symposium page, and you see it there at the bottom of the screen. It's a great resource to tell you all about the event, and you can even check out what we did at last year's event as well. And then the last thing I want to do before we take a couple of questions is take yet another opportunity to thank our sponsors for today's Power Up session. This session was brought to you by Keyed-In, Maven Link, and Sciforma. Can't thank you enough for all of your support of the Resource Management Institute and today's session as well. So with that, I want to move into, I see we've got just a couple of minutes before the top of the hour. Several questions have rolled in here, so I'm going to sift through these. Give me just a second. And it looks like, okay, here's one. I think I'm going to take this one, and then Kieran, I see one for you as well. So this one, great, somebody has taken advantage already of joining the RMI. I appreciate you doing that and telling us you did it. Mention some of the fundamentals of just-in-time resourcing. Tell me more about that, and where can I go and pick up some more on it. So just-in-time resourcing, I know we showed it pretty quickly here in the session. This is our commercial-grade resource management methodology. I'll just say it's the foundation of our approach to resource management. And we actually teach the methodology and all of its different functions in the RMCP program that we've been talking about here. So that would be one place where you can get, not just the taste of just-in-time resourcing, but you can go pretty in-depth and learn, not only what and why we do it, but how we do it as well. So a lot of really good stuff there as part of that certification program. Beyond that, and some opportunities to, really get kind of a feel for it is, the white papers that I mentioned and other thought leadership pieces being on the RMI website. You can go check those out. It doesn't cost you anything to take a look at those. That'll give you a good introduction to what just-in-time resourcing is. So I'd point you at those 2 resources. So great question. Great question there. And it looks like we are just about out of time. So I did see another question come in for Kieran. We might take that one offline here and get that answered. So want to end on time here with the limited time we have. So let me just end by saying thank you for taking time out of your day and being a part of the Power Up session. A lot of really good content here. I hope you found a few things that you could take away and take back to your organization and put into practice. So thanks for being with us, and we'll see you in our next Power Up.